A lot of us who do liberation work know this. Whenever you plan something for the margins, it works for everyone. Everyone. So the book, and I talk about this a little bit in the intro, while I am, focusing on and uplifting the experiences of Black women, what I'm talking about, all the tools are transferable for everyone. Many of us grew up reading leadership books by older white men. And I'll never forget trying to, piece out and parse out what was relevant for me, and I'm reading Good to Great, or I'm reading Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and trying to, okay, how does this actually look on me? It's time to make sure that we have books that can speak directly to a diverse set of experiences.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, the star of the show,
LaMarr Darnell Shields.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of the day it is. You're at the right place at the right time. And yes, you are with the right person. Who am I? Well, you should know because you clicked on the link to listen to me. But if you don't know, I am Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields, the creator of Sound Bombing. And my goal is to introduce you to people with ideas that will help you unlock your full potential. Hey, this is March, and in honor of March, and in the month of March, we're honoring social workers, but we're also honoring women. This is Women History Month, and I want to send a shout out to my amazing mother, Aline D. Shields, who's repping the great city of Chicago by way of Mississippi. Could not be here without that amazing woman, and I'm honored to be her baby boy. We know that March is Women History Month, but listen, as we celebrate this month, I have some sobering news to share with you. Black women continue to be sorely underrepresented in leadership roles in corporate America. Currently, they make up 12.7% of the U.S. population, yet they represent only 1.3% of senior management and executive roles of S&P 500 firms, 2.2% of Fortune 500 boards and directors. In post-Ursula Burns world, there is not a single Black female CEO in the Fortune 500 world. Well, despite this underrepresentation, a small subset of Black women have found success as leaders and play roles in driving organizational change. And one of them is joining me today in the studio. She is the founder and CEO of Lead for Liberation and Indigo Women, a serial entrepreneur with an extensive 20-year background in leadership and life coaching, organizational culture, redesign, business strategy, educational leadership. Her first company, Lead for Liberation, is a leadership development organization dedicated to guiding leaders of organizations, school districts, and foundations to redesign their workplace cultures through the lens of liberation. Through Lead for Liberation's transformative group coaching cohorts, a long-term partnership executive leaders within an organization and school districts across the country, she's created high-performing independent organizations. Inspired by the success of that organization in the education nonprofit sector, she decided, listen, that ain't enough. I want to do something else. So she founded Indigo Women, a coaching practice dedicated to creating spaces, methods, and conditions for Black women. But prior to that, I knew her in a different world. I knew her when she was an educational rock star leader, running schools, then working with the KIPP Foundation. But I'm so excited because she has a brand new book out. I went all over the place and found this from Amazon. Homegirl was even on the Walmart page with this book. She released her first book, Becoming an Indigo Woman, How to Thrive in Leadership and in Life, which is an invitation for Black women in leadership to center on self-care as a catalytic strategy toward thriving in life and leadership. Who am I talking about? I would like to welcome my friend, and I can say that with a capital F, my friend Shayna Hammond to Sound Bombing. Shayna, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much. It is so great to be here with you.
I just have to say, you look amazing. I've been lightweight stalking you, and my producer and my producer said, she's such a beautiful young lady, because she's much older than us. And I was like, yeah, Shayna has always been fly. I mean, I don't know how you stay fly when you disciplining kids, chasing them down the hallway. I'm talking before your own children, right? Meeting with some of these crazy parents, having to fight a school board, having to fight superintendents, trying to decide if this is the real thing that you want to do. But all in all, you still kept it fly. Shayna, it is an honor to hang out with you and see you again today. What's up, homegirl? As y'all know, I know this sister, right? I know this sister.
Yeah, you do. We go back. We go way back.
We go way back. I want to just start. Let's just do a quick check-in. Let my listeners know how you are doing, and then let them know where you're calling in from.
Yes, I am calling in from my hometown, Washington, D.C. So excited to be back here. When we met, we were in Baltimore. So in my Baltimore days, I always say Baltimore taught me how to lead. I led that school you just spoke about in Baltimore City and West Side. Loved it there. And I'm now coming in from DC, still living on purpose. So thank you for that acknowledgement. I'm just happy to be here and to be living right on purpose.
All right, Shayna Renee Hammond, this is Women's History Month. I need you to tell me what woman or which group of women have inspired you to be your very best.
I would have to say my grandmother, Eliza Hammond. I should say Reverend Eliza Hammond. She just was such an embodiment and an example of love. I didn't know her long. She passed away when I was 9, and she taught me the power of showing up as exactly who you are, and that it doesn't take long to make a lasting impact on someone. She would speak so much love and power over me. And I'll just never forget being with her, how I felt around her and her love, and seeing also so many people revere her to this day. You know, people talk about her and wanted to be prayed over her. She just is an incredible, incredible inspiration. And a cousin of mine not too long ago sent me a sermon where she talked about Black women specifically and the power that we possess. And I just know that I'm picking up where she left off, and she's my greatest inspiration.
One thing I know about us, teachers can do whatever the hell we want to do. We are so multidimensional. We're priests, we're imam, we're rabbi, we're security, we're prayer partners, we're accountants, we're security guards, we're cafeteria workers, we're bus drivers. We do all those things. And so I was excited to bring you here because I know that there's somebody out there who is stuck in their job, and not saying that you're stuck in education, because education got you and us started doing this work. But I want to start out with this question first. How do you pivot from being a teacher, being one of the youngest principals in the city, and then turn that thing around to be a boss? Talk to us about how you were able to pivot from that goal to the next goal to then the next goal.
Yes, like you said, I mean, when you're an educator, you have to gain a lot of skills, and they're all transferable. And I always say at the end of the day, I am a teacher. That's who I am. It's part of my core. I talk in my book about the JCC, your jam, your craft, and your calling. So my craft has always been teaching. It's always been leading people, leading children, leading adults. And when I really got still and grew spiritually, I understood that the calling wasn't just in the four walls of a classroom or even the walls of a school as a principal. The whisper was, you're here to teach the masses. And that used to scare me. You know, it still does sometimes when I'm not centered, but that calling has been consistent. It just keeps expanding over time. And so what that has meant for me was going from a teacher to a principal and then an entrepreneur was really taking what I had learned as a very young principal into teaching people how to lead well, not just manage, but really lead people. Because like a lot of principals, I experienced and noticed a lot of gaps in principal preparation, going from leading students to leading adults. And one of the biggest gaps I noticed was in emotional intelligence, and it was leading through the lens of liberation, what it means to lead people who are different from you. And I noticed that that wasn't an issue just in the education sector. That's an issue in the nonprofit and corporate sectors, really everywhere. And so I quickly learned that, you know, what I became passionate about in terms of gaps in leadership was actually a gap for pretty much everyone. And so I built coaching methodologies specifically around emotional intelligence and liberation. And that has taken me from principalship to working with nonprofits to now really focusing on who I love the most in this world, and that is Black women in leadership. And so really excited to do that.
Wow. So we're going to take a step back. We're going to move away from the do and we're going to go to the who. So you said a whole lot about what you're doing. I want to go back to little Shayna growing up in the city, little Shayna trying to figure out where she want to go, what she wants to do when she grows up, when she puts on her big girl shoes and walk down the hall. What role did your family play, or what role did your community play, or what role did the schools that you attended help Shayna get to where she is? Because quite often we look at these great leaders who are running these corporations. We look at some of these great athletes. And one thing that I like to recognize, Shayna, think about the coaches who coached us when we were learning how to play sports, or that after school teacher when we were 7 years old who couldn't get mad. Talk to me about your preparation now, not your preparation from the degrees you got, the preparation for the people that prepared you to carry this mantle and this torch, because quite often people talk about all the degrees and they talk about all the do, but I want you to talk about the who helped you prepare and what was in your DNA that got you in these places right now.
I love this question. So my parents met in Detroit. So my father is a Washingtonian and my mother is from Detroit. They met in Detroit, got married, had me in Detroit. So I was born in the D.
You from the D. Shout out to Detroit, right next door to Chicago. You know, we probably family, right? Because you know, listen, Chicago and Detroit real close.
Get us talking, we'll figure it out. But, you know, so we didn't stay in the D long. My father was an attorney. And so he was the first, generation college grad. So we went wherever the jobs were. You know, both my parents were first generation college grads. And so his first job was actually in Pinckney, Michigan, which is a very rural town in Michigan. Anybody who knows Pinckney, whenever I say that, they make a face. It's like, ooh, because I know we were the first Black family to ever set foot, possibly last, in Pinckney, Michigan. We didn't stay there long. My very first day of school, I walk onto the bus. All the kids moved to the edge of their seats. They threw things at me, called me monkey, told me I couldn't sit down. I swayed up and down the aisle crying, and the bus driver did absolutely nothing. Next day, my father had a conversation with the bus driver, and I had an assigned seat behind the bus driver the entire school year. No one ever sat next to me. So that my introduction to school and race was in kindergarten on that first day and for that first year. So needless to say, we didn't stay in Pinckney long. My father was able to secure another job in Okemos, Michigan, which is like your typical suburban town right outside of Lansing, Michigan. So by this time, I'm maybe one of 4 Black children in the school. So I experienced more of the implicit biases. I was, usually seated in the back. I was made to feel I wasn't as smart as the other kids. I was tracked into all the lowest reading groups and all the lowest math groups. And I just thought school wasn't for me. Then my father got his dream job in his hometown, Washington, D.C. when I turned 10. And I went to DC public schools. This was the first time, 5th grade, Mr. Beasley, he knows who he is, my very first Black teacher. And he quite literally changed everything for me. He was the first teacher to actually see me as a human being, as a person. And he was the first teacher, too, to even say I was a leader, which was, surprising to me, because as a student at that point, I was very quiet. I had learned to just kind of blend in with the other students. I didn't really say too much. And the reason why he said that, he was very adamant about us writing in journals. We had to write a journal entry every single day. And he also made us read the newspaper every single day. And he would, give all these thought-provoking prompts. And I would just go to town and just start writing in my journal. And he, periodically would read our journals. And he said, Shayna, you're a leader. And I said, how do you know that? He said, because I see what you write about and I see how you treat people. You are a leader. And he completely changed my whole view of what leader looks like. And, really, truly got me a chance to see that, I really do have more to offer than maybe other teachers have seen in me before. So, in fifth grade, at 10 years old, I experienced the power of a teacher. And of course, that informed me going into education.
It's interesting as you're talking, I could feel the emotion. What I love about us as Black folks, we will emote. I don't care where we are.
Listen.
And you literally, I don't know if this teacher is still around or alive, or you still connected with him, but just by calling his name, it says a lot about, the impact that he had on you. And he said that you were a leader. So I want to go right there. How would you then describe your leadership style?
So then I was quiet. I didn't say a whole lot. I wasn't your extra kind of extroverted child. I'm both an introvert and an extrovert. I'm someone who definitely needs some time to kind of go in, reflect. I like to observe first before I kind of put myself out there. And that's kind of the way I was. However, I was very active in sports. By that time, I was an elite gymnast. I also played basketball, played softball, and I oftentimes was asked to be the captain. And I think it was because I kind of had this quiet leadership about me. I always was, I'm an empath. I always have been. I'm always kind of, thinking about how other people are experiencing a certain scenario, and always kind of looking out for folk. And that's always been my kind of leadership ethos, and hasn't necessarily been, kind of touted as the best leadership style throughout the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But that was my way. And I learned how to, lead in my way and had some great experiences along the way.
So that makes sense. That makes sense now because the title of your book is Indigo Women. And now when we had our first child, Hadaya Ayodele, who's now in college, I don't know if my kids were little when we were working, and we did some research on indigo, indigo children who are believed to possess special, unusual, sometimes supernatural traits or abilities. And what I heard you say is you are an empath, and that is one of the themes of Indigo and now Indigo Women. Yeah. Share with us why you decided to choose that title as it relates to your book. I consider myself an Ubuntu teacher. It's a concept that comes out of South Africa, like you say, Indigo leader, Indigo Women. I consider myself, when they introduced me, as an Ubuntu teacher. But for those that aren't familiar with the concept of Indigo, why did you choose that title of the book?
Yes, Indigo chose me. It actually came through a therapy session. I was with my therapist, and my therapist asked me to come up with a word that would remind me of who I am and of my power. We were working through, times where I may shrink myself or shy away from the spotlight, right? And we were working through different strategies to really root myself in my power. And immediately what first came to mind was the word needed to have both a feminine and masculine connotation. And as soon as that thought came through, Indigo came through so clearly. And I actually did the research around Indigo. I had some inclination around what it meant, but did research later and was just blown away with how aligned that word is to who I am, what I believe about leadership, and just the different experiences that I've had. And, Indigo has properties and meanings around spirituality, wisdom, fairness, intuition. And really, this book is about coming back home to yourself, your true self, your spirit self, so that you're rooted in the decisions that you make, you're rooted in your calling, and you're rooted in your power. Because as Black women, there are many systems put into place to have us forget about our power, strip us of our power. And we are extremely powerful. And this is just that invitation to get back to that, should we ever lose sight of who we are.
You use the word being invisible. There is a word that comes out of South Africa it says sawubona. And it's a word that I use when I meet people. And that greeting is a simple greeting, but with a whole bunch of to it. And sawubona simply says, I see you. I value you. It's a word that makes the invisible visible. And it's a word that you use. And what I've discovered is that many women somewhat feel invisible in their spaces. So then how do you navigate this concept of intersectional invisibility, and how do you help other women do the same in their positions?
Yes. In the book and in the program, we talk about going from leading from the margins to leading from the center. So leading from the margins means any of us who are a part of, a marginalized group, and Black women are a part of at least two. there are so many, like I was saying, kind of systems and invitations to self-silence yourself, and pressures to assimilate, pressures to be tokenized, and pressures to really just dim different parts of yourself and de-emphasize certain parts of yourself. And we talk about what it means to go from leading from your core, from your center. And a lot of that comes through spiritual practice. And those practices can look like meditation. They can look like prayer. They can look like using, a nature element to just get really back down to exactly who you are, who you're meant to be, and how you're meant to lead. We're all meant to lead, of course, ourselves first, and then someone else in some way, shape, or fashion. And it's really, really important to do those necessary practices that just quiet out the outside noise so that all you hear is your true voice. So that we don't confuse other voices with what we know to be true, because everyone likes to have an agenda for us and we have our own agenda. And it's really important for us to root ourselves in what that is for us.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit more about this book. Of course, Carrie sent me tons of stuff, and I know you just had a book launch, right?
I did.
How was the book launch, and what did that feel like? This is your first book, and you spoken all over. For some reason, I think the last time I saw you, I don't know why I felt like we were in Houston, like Kip in Houston. It seemed like it was that long ago that you and I, that actually, as the old people say, I put my eyes on you. And I had wondered where you had gone, but I knew you had the children and things of that nature. And then when I saw that you had a book, I was like, this is amazing. This is perfect for Shayna because it gives an opportunity to extend herself when she can't be in these places. Talk to me about the book launch. How was the book launch? And talk to me about the people that came to the book launch and what do you want this book to do for people once they read it?
The launch was incredible. I did a virtual launch first and had, a group of former clients to friends, to family members from out of town. And then the in-person launch was everything. We did it at Busboys on 14th and V here in Washington, D.C.
My favorite. I love Andy over at Busboy. I love Buzz. You did it right. You went back. Like I just watched the comedian Earthquake yesterday, who's from D.C. I love it. So he said, when I do my Netflix special, I am going to do it at home. So for you to do it in Busboy, when my book came out, I did it in Chicago. I was like, there's no other place than Chicago, because if nobody else likes you, the home team will always represent. And you from old DC, you're not from gentrified DC. You know what I mean? Exactly. You from old DC. So you did it at Busboys and Poets.
I did.
And what was that experience like?
It was incredible. It was, top 3 most memorable experiences of my life. Obviously, having my children being the top 2, it was up there because it was really what I didn't realize how much of a healing process writing this book was for me. And then to put it out there and have, the love and joy and receptivity just kind of, come back to me like that from friends, from family members. I mean, friends I've had for over 20 years were there, family members, former clients, current clients, Indigo Women who are in the program right now, all there, just so excited to celebrate the book. They had questions. There was a Q&A. Probably the best part was that Rachel Briggs is one of the Indigo Women who's gone through the group coaching experience that actually came before the book. And she was one of the MCs. And then one of my really good girlfriends, Janelle Burwell, was the other co-MC. And so, Rachel represented the leadership part of me. Janelle represented the personal part of me. And so they were able to, go into the book, ask questions about what parts were the hardest to write and why. And it was very intimate.
So I heard you say that this book was therapeutic for you.
It was.
So I like to ask authors this question. So did you originally write the book for yourself? Was it for you? Or did you write it for yourself and just to share with other people? Because I know when I wrote my book, it was really a reflection of being an educator. I didn't think anybody was going to pick the book up, but then I realized the more people I shared the story with, it was like, I identify with this. So talk to me about the writing process and, what was some of the lessons that you learned about yourself during that process?
It was quite a process. It was more the latter. It was both for other people and myself. So what I did before I wrote the book was I launched the Indigo Women group coaching experience.
Okay,
And so this is a space, a 9-week virtual program for Black women in leadership to come through, where they learn through my coaching methodology, which is called the R3 method. And the 3 R's are rebirth, reset, and renew. It is a place for Black women to come to rebirth, reset, and renew themselves. And I'd been doing this process with many women, executive women, over the years. And I, did it to the side. I did it through Lead for Liberation. And I was like, you know what? This deserves its own container. So I actually ran that program 5 times, 5 different cohorts. And the feedback was overwhelming. I mean, women were changing their lives. They were getting promotions. They were starting businesses. They were getting married. I mean, they were taking huge strides in their lives. And so once I knew, okay, this method definitely works, now it's time to, extend this so that more people have access to it. And so that's what brought me to the book. Now, once I got into the book writing process, I realized there was an invitation for me to be way more vulnerable than I had anticipated and planned to. And so there's a section in there and a section in the methodology around telling the truth. And I tell some pretty strong, deep truths, and which for me, someone who used to hide as a leader, someone who is more of a quiet, and used to be more quiet as a leader, was a big challenge, and was a stretch for me. But I'm so glad that I did it. There's just nothing like hearing from people I do not know from all over saying, they read something there that unlocked something they've been, struggling with for years. And now they've set themselves free. I mean, that's really what it's about. It is about liberation. And I'm here for Black liberation in all its forms.
So as you were writing this book, are there some things you wish you knew prior to actually then sitting down and writing the book and then having to sell the book and promote the book? What are some things you wish you knew before you said, I'm going to do this? Because when you make that public commitment and folks are going to hold you to it, right? There's research around that public commitment. What are some things you wish you knew before starting this process?
I think I'm still learning it. I think I'm still learning what it means to market a book. I'm an entrepreneur, so I know how to market programs and I know how to launch programs. What I'm now learning is very different to launch a book. A book is more like a marathon. A program is more like a sprint. And so I think for me, I'm learning that, okay, this is going to be a long journey of really thinking about who I'd like to kind of talk to, who I'd like to, which kind of podcast would I like to be a part of? And so I'm just in that space now. I just launched in January. We're just now in March. And so I'm just literally in that space of learning what that all means. But when it comes to what I wrote and how I wrote, I have no regrets. I'm just excited that I did it. I walked through my own fears, and to hear the reaction has been incredible.
Well, you use the word liberation a lot, not enough, but just a lot. So I feel it's liberating. Speaking of liberation, I want to go to the critical voice, because again, people look at Shayna raising a family, very, very busy, traveling. Now you have this book, running an organization, then starting another organization. I want to talk about that critical voice. So let's talk about that critical voice. One is, do you have a critical voice? And I don't even know why I'm asking you that question, because I don't know a person on the planet doesn't. If so, what do you find it saying to you? Okay. And then how do you combat that critical voice that keeps showing up?
Oh, of course. Everyone has a critical voice. I think mine it usually is around, are you doing or being too much, right? I think for a lot of Black women, we're told that in a lot of ways, like you're doing too much, you're being too much, you are too much.
So did you all start the phrase that my son and my daughter said, you doing too much, you're doing, I'm going to blame that on all the Black women out there. You ought to create your own phrase, you're doing too much.
Too much. And there are times where I worry that, okay, am I doing too much? Will I go into overwhelm? And then I come back to my daily practices. I don't take meetings before 10 o'clock. I don't take meetings on Fridays. And even with me growing, with the book growing, there are certain boundaries and there are certain practices that I know have to be true for me. And anytime those practices, me not tending to my spiritual self, anytime that gets threatened, that's when I know, okay, maybe I am doing too much and I need to kind of pull back. But as long as I can keep those things true, and because my spirituality is what anchors me, and as long as my anchor is firm, I'm good. So whenever those thoughts come up, I'm like, all right, let me pause. Is this real? Am I able to do what I need to do to show up? And if the answer is yes, we're good. If the answer is no, then it's like, okay, I need to let something go. I need to release this over here or that over there. But yeah, every so often I'll get that little voice that says like, you doing too much.
Oh, that voice is jumping on me all the time. Well, you gave us some of the strategies that you use. I want to go a little deeper. What's one tool that you always carry in your toolbox, no matter what project that you're working on? Like, it can be a physical tool, it can be a spiritual tool. What's that one tool that you always like, I'm always pull this out. If I'm about to get a $1 million contract, or if I got to deal with an irate client, or if I got to deal with a woman who's like, I don't like what you wrote in this book. I don't know. You talked about my family, this, what have you. What's that one tool that you always carry with? Because you gave us some strategies that you use, but what is a tool that you, no matter what, is always with you?
Oh, my breath. My breath is a tool that is always with me. I even teach in the program different breathing techniques, but at the end of the day, I can always take 3 resonant breaths and I can always bring myself back down. I can bring my heart rate down. And when I take that breath, I come back to center. And that's a tool I can use at any moment. I do use all the time, high stakes situations, even low stakes situations. It's my breath every day, all day.
Yeah, that breath is so important. Breath work is important. I tell my children to remember who you are. That's their mantra. One is to be here now, because it's so challenging for us to be present. Like, you on this call, you probably thinking about what the kids doing, what's going on. Because a lot of times our mind is all over the place. But I tell people the present is a gift. The future, we don't even know it's real. In the past, sometimes we really can't prove it. So let's just be present and be here now. And the breath is a great way of doing that. I know most of your work is centered around women of color and Black women or Black Indigenous women of color, however you define it. I know that many women are going into the workforce in droves, and many of them are starting a business, but some of them are going into these agencies. I want you to think about this, figuring out how does a woman of color figure out if a company will be inclusive as a part of their job hunting process. So, you're coming into a company, you want to know, are they inclusive to people that look like you? Mm-hmm. What questions should they ask themselves if a company supports women of color going into that? Because everybody, Shayna, is not going to start a business, which you and I wish people were. I mean, I'm always encouraging people to do that. But for those that are not, what questions can they ask to see if a company is really supporting women of color?
Yeah, I would, I always say to ask questions like, tell me about your racial equity journey at your organization. What do you call that journey? How long have you been on it? Is an important question. Is it something they just started maybe a year ago? And I'd love to speak to some other Black women who work for you and work with you. I always, recommend talking to people who actually worked there or have worked with, in close proximity to that organization, so you can get their perspective as well. Also, what might be helpful, I've also recommended that some women shadow first. What might it look like for you to shadow a couple of other women within the organization before you take it on? Just so you can get a sense of how they talk, their culture. Do you hear them saying things like culture fit, or do they say more so things like culture add? Are they looking for you to add, or are they looking for you to fit in? And really look for and listen for language around fit. And if so, that might not be the best place for you.
Great advice. Now, so you've taught, you ran a school, you're running an organization, but we also know, Shayna, that some people just don't stick around. We lose it, we give up, and we walk away. What's the most common reason for people failing or giving up? And then why do entrepreneurs typically close their doors and just walk away and say, I'm going to go back and get a 9-to-5. I'm going to give me a good government job, and I'm just going to sit my butt down here. So why do entrepreneurs close their doors and walk away?
I actually almost did that. I talk about this in my book. So I'm going to celebrate 10 years of Lead for Liberation in June.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. 10 years. I'm so excited about that. But I'll tell you, year six and seven were our darkest years. Really, really tough. And I fell out of love with it. I was burned out. I was over customizing services for clients. So I was kind of in this perpetual state of building content over and over. And it scared me because it was my livelihood. I thought to myself, how could I fall out of love with the thing I created? And I think that some entrepreneurs, when they get to that place, it scares them and then they go back. Well, what I decided to do, I did push pause. I didn't stop the organization, but I didn't take on any new clients. And I did go get a full-time job for about 8 to 9 months. In that period, I was able to take truly a break and take a step back. And that is also when I decided to really birth Indigo Women as well. And what I realized was 2 things. One, part of the issue was I had this other vision I wasn't paying attention to at all. And then 2, it wasn't the business that I fell out of love with. It was how I was delivering the services. So oftentimes when I'm coaching entrepreneurs, they become burned out because they're delivering their services or their product in a way that served them and their clients in a certain time, and they haven't pivoted with their clients and pivoted even with themselves and their creative process. And so they hit a rut and they think they're done, but it's no, you just plateaued. You need to go to another level. And maybe a break does look like getting a part-time job or maybe not taking on new clients, but it does mean you do need to stop doing what you've been doing and switch up how you are, maybe even your business model. And so that's what I did. I rebranded to Lead for Liberation. We shifted our business model and we literally took off. Year 8 was our strongest year. Year 9, even stronger, and I just expect us to keep going up. And it's because we shifted our business model and my creativity came back through birthing Indigo Women, which has given me a kind of energy I didn't know I had.
So what do you say to women who listen to you, who read your book, and they say, Shayna is brilliant. She is amazing. She is smart. But why is she limiting her time only with Black women, where there's so many other women that can use what she has to offer? How do you respond to those individuals?
Yeah, so a lot of us who do liberation work know this. Whenever you plan something for the margins, it works for everyone. Everyone. So the book, and I talk about this a little bit in the intro, while I am, focusing on and uplifting the experiences of Black women, what I'm talking about, all the tools are transferable for everyone. Many of us grew up reading leadership books by older white men. And I'll never forget trying to, piece out and parse out what was relevant for me. When I'm reading Good to Great or I'm reading 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and trying to, okay, how does this actually look on me? It's time to make sure that we have books that can speak directly to a diverse set of experiences. I'm obviously, as a Black woman, most proximate to my experience and how the world reacts also to me as a Black woman. And I wrote the book that I always wanted to see, and so I think more of us, it's an invitation for anyone, really. If you haven't seen something and you don't see yourself in something, maybe it's time for you to put that out there. And when I'm honoring Black women, I am honoring everyone. So something we say at Indigo Women is when Black women thrive, humanity thrives. And I believe that with every fiber in my being. And there is nothing limiting about that.
I love that. Well, Shayna, I am so proud of the work that you're doing, proud of you being a rock star mom, raising those children, traveling, writing, lecturing, but pouring into the amazing people on this planet. How can my listeners get in contact with you? And if they want to get a copy of the book, I did see you in the Walmart. That was not a joke. I'm like, this girl that made it. I ain't even on the Walmart. How the heck you get in Walmart? So how can my listeners get in contact with you? And if they want to purchase a copy of the book. And if they want to be one of your coaching clients as well, let us know how we can do that.
Yes. So applications are open for the Indigo Women group coaching experience. The deadline is April 19th. Go to indigowomencommunity.com and apply. You can buy my book online at Amazon, at Target, at Walmart, and Barnes and Noble. Okay, so please reach out. You can also find me on Instagram at Indigo Women Community as well. You can find me on LinkedIn at Shayna Renee Hammond. You'll hear me and see me talk about both Lead for Liberation as well as Indigo Women. And I can't wait to connect with more folks.
Yes, well, I'm going to encourage you to go out and pick up all the things that Shayna is doing. We are so proud. My team over here is so proud of her being able to pivot, working with the school system. I mean, if you work in any school system, you can do anything, because the stuff that many of us have gone through, all we used to say, Shayna, is like, I just want to work with the kids. I don't want to do anything else, but I just want to work with the kids. I don't want to do payroll. I don't want to do discipline. I want to call parents. Because when we went to school, when we was in those schools of education, nobody told us we had to deal with all the other stuff. We thought we were just going to come into the building and then do the work. My final question for this last segment before we do Super Bomb questions is this. What do people misunderstand about Shayna Renee Hammond?
What do people misunderstand about me? You know what? I think it's that I have it all figured out, or that I have it all together, right? And what people misunderstand is it's not all figured out or all together at all. It's just that I spend a lot of time getting really clear on who I am and my source. And I'm very, very clear on who I work for and who I work on behalf. And that's what you see. You know, just like anyone else, I make mistakes. I have vulnerabilities. I have insecurities, just like the next one. What you're experiencing and seeing is an Indigo woman, a free Black woman, a woman who knows exactly who she is, who she stands for, and who her source is.
I love that. Well, the second part of the show is called the Super Bomb Questions. And these questions are somewhat different from the first part. The difference between this Shayna Renee Hammond is we want you to answer them as quickly as possible. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's take a deep breath. Inhale. Let it out. Here we go. What's your favorite word?
Indigo.
What's your favorite quote or Bible verse or a song or a lyric to a song?
Maya Angelou will always remember. We may not always remember what people say and do, but we always remember how people make us feel.
What's your superpower?
My intuition.
What's your spirit animal?
Spirit animal, cat.
What moves you to tears of joy?
Children.
What moves you to tears of sorrow?
Abuse.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
Be with my kids.
Outside of your book, what is the book or books you've given most as a gift and why?
Anything written by Nikki Giovanni.
What's your morning routine after you do all the biological things? What do you always do?
Meditate.
What advice are you glad you ignored?
Hide.
What do you know for sure?
I am love.
And my show is called Sound Bombing. So what sound or noise do you love?
The sound of my children laughing.
Hey, that's a great way to wrap up the show. Shayna Renee Hammond, thank you for hanging out with me. It's been a pleasure and a joy talking with you. I wish you much, much success.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
And I could not do this without my producer, Carrie Mattia, my engineer, Alexander Blanc, and all of you. Listen, go out and subscribe to the show. I'm telling you, this thing is the truth, 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 truth. That's what we focus on. And listen, go out and do something for someone other than yourself today. You've been listening to Sound Bomb, and go out and check out Shayna. Take care. Peace.